I mean,
Yeah,
Jesus, like Persona 4 Golden's bad end was really easy to achieve. Sorry, not Golden. Persona 4 Original's bad end was really easy to get because it wasn't just figure out who did it. It was also say the right thing 6 times in a row.
yep.
In a scene in the
Fuck up the
hospital.
dialogue. Yeah,
Fuck
exactly.
up a single one of those prompts, and you get the bad end, and you lose out on what I
You
want
get
to say is
you get a couple of
20% of the
tries. You get a couple of tries to like to do the guess, because I was watching Punch Mom do it recently, but yeah, but then it immediately just throws you out. And then if you do it correctly, you get to hear, "This is where we say farewell" for the next 3 months, because the game didn't plan around the extended golden shit. Like sending you off even though you're not even close to wrapping it up.
Don't worry about
You
it.
know? Anyway, well, speaking of Persona, and moving right along, I played
More strikers?
more strikers, and everything, as we said, everything that is happening, that is just, hey, look, it's more P5, is like, I don't know if that was like Omega Force trying to impress
Everyone?
everyone, or if that was what they were told to do by Atlas. But fucking unbelievably amazing job at making like this just really continue to be 95% Persona 5.
And like 1% Muso and 4% others.
Okay. However, going a couple more hours in and having a little more time in that battle system, I can say that I feel that I'm starting to feel that it's too much. I'm starting to feel that the attempt to keep every single mechanic from the RPG and apply it to the Muso battle system is unnecessary.
Maybe.
I mean,
I ran into I beat the second dungeon, then I dropped it. I'll go back to it later. But I'm doing in the middle of the second dungeon. I'm like in this feeling of like battles are over in 10 seconds, one way or the other.
The tutorial they're giving you for this moment, you don't even have time to really like internalize and or try out what they're saying, because the fight is already done, right? Furthermore, the first 30 fights have tutorials popping up to describe whether it's the character switching or the mechanic of the specific moment of the place you're in. But a new mechanic has been introduced with it feels like the first 30 fights. And you know, like, all right, sometimes there's the extensions, you get the all-out attacks, and then the weaknesses and the switch. That's all there. That's all, you know, and it ends up being fine. But considering how quickly those fights end, they introduce so much stuff that's like, we're good. I think we'll be okay without this aspect or that aspect or the.
So, did you get the first boss?
I got to. I'm still in 706 or whatever the number was changed to. And then I fought the. I think it's a throne. Or so. It's a principality.
Oh, no, the first boss is like a unique shadow. It's like the head of the dungeon, kind of thing. So I was wrong what I said earlier. I said fights end in 10 seconds one way or the other. That's not exactly true. Fights end in 10 seconds if you get a good ambush and they're an appropriate level. If they're significantly above you in level, they can trounce you in seconds.
So this is what I know.
The blue enemy or the sparkling one that you see just kills you instantly. And then there's the boss fights, which are 15 minutes long.
So I noticed...
Crazy tough.
Well, I noticed that even the mini boss so far was like, oh, that's everyone's almost dead. Like it got rough real quick in one of those mini boss fights, and I was like, oh shit, this is like, a tank that's just flying around, and you're getting the occasional staggers, but the damage output is like you get like 3 casts before your MP's down, so you gotta, you know, the big enemy fights are like the opposite of the 2-second, you know, grunt battles. And then after beating it, I was like, okay, well, you know, sure, that's a challenge, and then we'll hop outside and then rest up or whatever and come back in. Although usually I liked to go all the way through the dungeon in a single sitting. But in this case, the the trouncing from that like mini boss was rough.
And then you don't move time, so it's fine.
But then it spits you back out, and then it's like, yeah, actually, there's no checkpoints around you anywhere here, so you are on your last pixel, and good luck sneaking over to the next one. Like, hope you don't. And I was like, man, like. Usually, there's at least a safe room right before one of
after
the P5 dungeon fights that lead up to not the final boss, but like the 2 or 3 mini bosses in the dungeon. There's usually a safe room you can use to be like, all right, let's hop back out and make our decision. And in this case, it was like, yeah, no, too fucking bad. And I had already used up my items at that point, mind you. So. It was like, okay, that's a weird choice. I'm still really early, I gotta say, but like, you know, I put in a good like 3 hours or so sitting there into the intro with Punch Mom, and then I'm another like couple in, like another 2 or so.
Every single time you leave the dungeon, go to Sophie's shop and buy the revive item.
Sure, yeah,
because they're in limited stock. But it resets when you go into a dungeon and leave, and just like every single time you go into that shop, buy it, because you will need many.
Now, is there a go home item that you can buy there right away?
Not that I found.
Okay, because clearly your safe room is leaving the dungeon, but what I'm describing is the journey to the safe room, the journey to the checkpoint, which is not near where that boss fight is, which is in fact 2 streets over and a couple of fights away.
My solution to that was go in, rush over to the boss so that all 8 people are fully healed, fight them with the main team, and then use the team that I didn't use to get back to the checkpoint.
So what I would love to do is, even checkpoint to swap the team up. But it just like this particular instance, like we were looking at.
You don't need to be at the checkpoint to swap the team up. You can swap the team, like the active team, from your menu.
I fucked up on that. Okay, I thought.
Yeah, me too. Until I streamed it, and people said, "Dude, you don't have to fucking go back to the checkpoint to change it because it's like a hidden little button."
Oh man, that's big.
Yeah, you can swap anytime.
That's big. Okay, I thought you were stuck with those 4.
Out of all the tutorials they tell you, like, it's kind of surprising they don't tell you that.
It doesn't.
No?
So I guess that's why we all thought the same thing then. Yeah, okay. All right. Huh. Because, you see the big swap members thing on the checkpoint after that tutorial introduces that mechanic. Or if they do, then I guess I didn't... I didn't catch that. I guess for some reason, you know what? Whether or not, if they did tell you and then I just wasn't reading, then that's my bad. But I definitely didn't know that and made that mistake. Okay. But yeah, that's kind of how I was you know feeling about it. I was like, yeah, the dungeon running here is like this could have been a little simpler. They didn't necessarily have to throw all this in.
I wish the combat was just straight up slower and had less enemies.
You could just kind of focus on your things a little bit more.
Where I was focusing on 3 or 4 of them instead of 50, but they die instantly because I have...
Your lock-on is not really being used, right?
Muso games tend to give you, like, you know, a character with a certain amount of tools, and those tools are for fodder, right? And they give you that fucking fodder, right? In this game, your tools are for primarily single target, and you're given like 20 non-fodders that you're either going to instantly kill with the one weakness ambush, or you're going to fight for a while.
Yeah. So, yeah, and you know what, it is true. It's like in 50 tutorials, you might miss a line or two. That's kind of human. You kind of, like, the locking on is definitely for the bosses, but, like, so in the meantime, in these fights, since everything's just kind of going, you just end up turning the camera around and kind of, you kind of mash in a direction, and then you're like, do I see a circle prompt? All right, just press it. Whatever's going. Did someone hit a weakness over there? Yeah, okay, I don't know.
Never not hit it.
Yeah, just fly over there, do an all-out attack.
To the upper left every now and then. Maybe somebody hit a weakness, you hit like a D-pad button.
You know, and you're just kind of tilting that camera around in the general direction you're slashing in. There was also, so me and Punch Mom stared at that. So the beginning, the first thing you learn is the Showtime mechanic, and we stared at that HUD for a couple of fights, trying to figure out where the meter for Showtime was.
Oh yeah, the meter that slowly crawls around your character's portrait.
Yeah, and like once you have it, you're on fire, and all the different characters are on fire, and it's there it is. But like checking where it, like, the actual meter, I was like looking for, I'm like, where in the screen does it disappear? You know? And then it's like, no, it's the art. It's the little bars next to the persona art that fill up and change color as you go. It's those little horizontal bars. And it's like, that's,
but when
why
it's
not just
when it's
make it
empty
a meter?
But when it's empty or almost full, it doesn't look like a meter. It looks like just part of the art.
Yes. So that's where some of the design and its design excellence is actually not communicating as effectively as it could by, I would even say, at best, making it a complete bar, or at worst, changing it so that the inside pips, when they're empty, are like transparent or black and not just like an alternate shade of the blue or so, you know? So I definitely feel that, like, as Persona, and particularly 5, is one of the most stylish video games ever made, there was no point in 5 original where I felt that the design, like, kind of confused me with some information delivery. Whereas here I was like, what is there? You know, and then now it's there and it's fine. But it was just a little bit of a weird thing from the beginning of the game because, yeah, like even that first tutorial where they introduce it, you're also seeing the entire HUD for the first time. So you're not exactly primed in that moment when Showtime is introduced to pick out the specifics of this new thing because you're taking in the entire game in this moment, you know? It's just a little small little things that are like, huh, okay, that's one way to do it. Yeah, and so I'm like, you know, in the end, I'm like, well, I guess this is kind of going to continue. Like every time I'm expecting the tutorials to kind of pop up for the next hour or so in each fight with a new mechanic, and there's times where I'm kind of like, should I be shooting this enemy? I mean, it's not weak to the guns, so maybe not, but the bullets are regenerating after every fight. You know, should I switch to this combo style, or, you know, and it just, I'm just like, okay, well, you can either just swing and do whatever, or you can use a lot of these mechanics or so, but it's having a hard time, like, I think, just because it's trying to be so faithful, and it's incredibly faithful, but it ends up being a little too much.
It's if I had to say one big flaw about that game, and desperate to talk to you once you get to that first, like, real boss fight, is that the game has, like, you know how a difficulty curve is supposed to be smooth? This is like a bunch of fucking jagged mountains that are
boom,
technically rising, and if you look at it really far away, it looks like a curve. But like it is like so easy, I'm getting tired for 2 hours, and then just bam,
yes,
bam,
yeah,
and then like a joke for 45 minutes.
And last thing I want to say here, because again, I feel like I always have to put these qualifiers out if somebody is like disagreeing because they're enjoying it and such. You can definitely ignore all these little things I'm talking about. You can ignore all the tutorials and all of these mechanics and just slash and mash and then eventually use the weakness when the time comes and you know, just ignore it and such. But I'm not in necessarily, I'm looking at what the game is trying to show you, you know? And I'm bringing that up because that's the design. So like, even if it's something that is like extraneous or like is ignorable, that's not the point. The point is that it introduces this mechanic as a thing that's like, hey, also be aware of this, you know? So I think the drip feed of tutorials for new mechanics over the course of the first couple hours is not the best way to communicate a lot of that stuff. And I also think that...
So oh, sorry, after you.
No, I think that like a couple of early fights that lasted longer where you got to perhaps try some of them out and, you know, like even like the analyzing...
Finish your combo, maybe
finish
like
your combo, yeah, you know, some of the like square triangle ones are like, yeah, everything's dead. I didn't even get to see it, you know? Or the like analyze and then scan, and it's like, okay, but it's already kind of doing it automatically, you know? It's like, so some of those things where you just like, yeah, just having a grounded fight to just take in all of this info in a way where you can practice it until it feels good or something along those lines would have done a lot better than like 2-minute fight tutorial or like 30-second fight tutorial and we're out, next one, you know?
So what's interesting is that, I mean, we're talking about this and we have a chat going on in the background. And one of the things that's interesting is that I talked to a bunch of people, and the general consensus of the people that I've talked to is that first boss, like proper boss fight, is like insanely difficult, mainly compared to everything around it. But you look over here, and as always, you get people going, I don't know, I don't see what the problem is. It didn't seem that hard. What are they talking about? And part of that is that there is one thing that you got wrong because you didn't know, Woolie, which is you said that most of those mechanics can be safely ignored if you just, you know, are good at the action combat.
Up to this early-ass point.
Yeah, not with the bosses. The bosses demand
you get them right,
that you use these mechanics.
Okay.
And the first boss in general is a problem that doesn't exist in Persona 5, but it doesn't exist that way because of the way the game is structured. So when you fight Kamoshida, right, in Persona 5, you have Joker, An, Ryuji, and Mona, right? You have those four. You got the wild card, and then you got fire, wind, and lightning, electricity, right? And the boss is weak to one or two of those. And if one of those characters dies, maybe Joker has it, and one of those characters is a healer, etc., right? Well, in Persona 5 Strikers / Scramble, you're given the entire gang right away, which means that if you, like me, like characters that don't fit a single one of the boss's weaknesses, you can go in and just be straight fucked because you can't trigger the weakness response.
Okay.
I went in with characters that could not hit the boss's weakness and was trying to fight that for like 4 hours. And then I had to leave and completely switch out my entire party so that I had a character that had the fire damage weakness, and then I had a character that would capitalize off burn, which would be Makoto with the nuke, and so then I could get the combo, blah, 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 blah.
Also, you've got full demon fusion going on, too.
Right. And then the boss went from impossible to tough.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're picking up with the full party at the start of this, for sure. And, I definitely, like, I had a moment where it's like, oh, man, like, somewhere around the world, somewhere, a sucker popped this game in without playing P5 and is just is melting into their chair right now. Someone is dying, like just a puddle with a controller in it. But yeah, no, that is true as well. You do have that entire spectrum. You're casting Aha right away, you know. There was another thing that came to mind, but I forgot it as you were describing that.
Oh, one thing that we never mentioned is that, hey, congrats on finding a reason to give Futaba gear. Because she has her hacking sequences where she takes less damage.
I saw that. I saw her equipping stuff on the character selector, and I was like, why? And then it's like, oh, because you got to do these.
Oh, you can equip her with items in fucking P5. Just doesn't do anything.
But just look for what though? You know, like yeah. Little defense escort sections or so. What was it? There was something else too. That was a little like, what are you going for here? Ah, well, anyway, it's gone. But in the end, you know, it's still a very fucking cool game. And
oh yeah, it's really cool.
It's really fun to switch to each of the Phantom Thieves and like do proper action combos with them.
Yeah.
It's cool to see fucking obviously Makoto's got her flurry punches and Yusuke's doing his judgment cuts, and
Yusuke is like aggressive Virgil pandering like I couldn't believe.
It's very 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 obvious. Yes, they're not hiding that at all. And you're just panther whipping around like, I don't know, what, Lords of Shadow or something, God of War, I don't know. Yeah. But it was, so that's a lot of fun. It's cool to just enjoy switching back and forth between them and doing some of that stuff. But yeah, that's it. That's just the feeling. Oh, it was just the idea that I remember like Punch Bomb actually like started playing you know, when we popped it in, and was just kind of getting the swing of the basics of like, you know, action game. And I remember I had to kind of go like, oh yeah, so even before we go any further here, let me explain that like for the last 15 years, third person action game has had this basic layout of two sticks, tap one in, usually crouch, tap the other in, usually recenter the camera or lock on. Triggers are going to be aim down the sights and fire your gun. And then there'll be like usually a grenade function or some other alternative function or alternative fire. Then you'll have on your face buttons, exactly, you'll have a dodge or a sprint, or then you have an attack button and then a jump button on X. And, you know, and I kind of was like, oh, by the way, this is what like generic third person video game thing has been. You know, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay, like, right, okay, let's get used to that. And and then as soon as the drip feed of these tutorials started, it was like, oh, this is, no, you know what, here, this is not going to work. This is going to be very, very, very rough. Because she went through P5 on easy, on very easy, and just kind of, you know, took it almost as a visual novel of sorts, where you kind of, where the hardest challenges were still not pressed for time, you know? But here, where that is the case, that it was like just gonna be a bad idea. So, you know, instead of switching off back and forth, I'll just play and she'll watch, you know? Anyway, I will report more back in, but fortunately, all that musoing ain't really a part of this game. There's so
weird.
Little of it.
It's so weird. It's nothing like what I expected. Even after watching like all the preview trailer footage and stuff like that, it's still not what I expected. It's crazy.
And like as a final note, even I would say that like I remember early on in Astral Chain, there was some combat details that I was not getting right away, and it took me a second to quite figure out the rhythm of what they kind of were looking for with the twin stick controls and stuff. But at least I was able to go to a training room in the HQ and figure it out, you know? And I think that training room time is really invaluable when you have a lot of things to you know, teach a player like this. And even the ability to just kind of like, I don't know, like, well, not to say that FF7 was anywhere near as complex with it, but you just, the ability to like go into a closed environment and fuck around does a lot for internalizing the combat system.
One of the best changes Monster Hunter literally ever made in its entire franchise history was World giving you a training dummy, a training room with all the different types of surfaces, and like just damage numbers.
Yep.
So you could go in and be like, is it worth it to charge up for the big hit? Yes.
Yeah, I can only imagine how fucking brutal it must have been to have to go out on a full expedition or boss fight to test out things.
Woolie, do you want to talk about motion values?
Not really.